Hey, beloved, I'm so glad you're here. I am coming to you from my garden because this series, you and I are going to get into spiritual living, conscious living, aka the road to freedom and liberation. And what does that look like in the day to day choices you and I have to make? What does a spiritually aligned relationship look like? A spiritually aligned health and well being practice look like? A spiritually aligned finances, career, vocation, community connection look like? Because it's when you and I understand the very life that we are living, the choices you make every day, the people you interact with, the offerings of your gifts to life itself, is spiritual living, is your spirituality. So let's get into it in this series, which we're going to go through September and October for the next couple months. And the practices I want to focus on in relationship to day-to-day living, pleasure, play, the spirituality of your pleasure, the spirituality of playing. I want to get into fasting and what it means to abstain and maybe take some things out of play so that you can more wholly be who you are intended to be. And as always, I want to talk about rest, but I want to talk about a specific flavor of Sabbath, which the Hebrew definition of Sabbath is often translated as to stop, which I'm down for. There's a bunch of stopping that we could get into. But it also can be translated as delight. So one of the practices we'll be diving into over the next couple months is the Sabbath practice of stopping and delighting. I hope you will join me if you are in the Albuquerque area. We gather at Sundays at 4 p.m., get into community, get into practicing with others. There is a depth and experience of yourself and your spiritual life that can only come in community. Let's get into it. I love you so much. Pleasure even when the world is crumbling. I believe that's what gets to happen when we move at a pace of mindfulness and recognize how good it feels to be connected to ourselves, to our truth, to God, to good. How pleasurable spiritual transformation gets to be when we make it a priority, when we make it more important than trying to get our value affirmed out here. And it's not always that common in spiritual conversations and spiritual communities to talk about pleasure, to talk about actual goodness, feeling good, and all the ways that we get to do that in these human bodies that are also filled with the good, made of the good, fully present with the good. And I think there's this weird sense of being good that means that if the world is crumbling, if people are going hungry and starving to death, and if war is happening, and if racial injustice is happening, and blah, yada, da, that oh no, I can't seek pleasure. That somehow I've got to get serious about changing the world. And I beg to differ. I believe pleasure is part of that birthright that the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu spoke of as inherent joy. I believe there's inherent pleasure. Our bodies were made to feel all the ways that we can experience sensation, experience emotion, experience touch and taste and smell and sound. I don't think God was mistaken in this beautiful creation we find ourselves living.
I believe pleasure has always been inherently a part of the game. And removing ourselves from it, removing ourselves from the goodness, the givingness of God, is what happens when we deny pleasure. And here's the thing. The best thing we've got to give to life is ourselves. That's it. That's the best we've got to give. You might have awesome skills. You might have a boatload of money. You might have some really good jokes. You might got dance moves for days. But the best thing we have to give is ourselves. The most impactful thing we have to offer is our divine nature, our unique, beautiful, authentic goodness. Now, think about if you were going to invite some folks for a dinner party. Do you want them showing up cranky and stoic and uptight and unwilling to experience pleasure? Is that the dinner party you want to throw? Or would you prefer a table surrounded by people deeply connected to their joy and their pleasure? I would opt for the second. But think about life itself. Think about who you are bringing to the table of life. Are you showing up as fulfilled, ecstatic, delighted, joyous creature? Are you showing up face-pinched, unwilling because the world is completely in chaos, which means I can't be in any sense of joy or delight? And yet, the world is begging for your joy. The world is begging for you to show up as your juiciest, most glorious, pleasurable self. That's who I want to hang out with. And I know for sure that when each of us get really close to our truth, and my God, it feels good to be close to our truth. I can't find the words to express how good it is to know and experience the good. And when we are in that place, when our vibration is moving in a place of joy and pleasure and ecstasy and delight, and we bring that to life, that resonant vibration of goodness begins to vibrate and resonate and radiate out into the world, giving itself to life, which has no other possibility but expanding the good. And it's not irresponsible. I could just hear somebody in my head, but that's an irresponsible approach to life. And what about social justice and change? I think it's irresponsible to skip the step of doing the work of knowing who and what you are. There is no justice without truth. There is no world that works for everybody without truth. And if we don't truly know who and what we are, none of the other stuff gets to happen. We bring our baggage, we bring our misbeliefs, our misunderstandings. That's what we then bring to the table. Not so helpful. So if you need permission to make your spiritual transformation a priority, You got it. You have all the permission, because I am telling you, it is the answer to all ills. Social, personal, global. Nothing good happens without goodness. And if we don't begin to become conscious of the good, present to the good, mindful of the good, all the good that is trying to move through us gets limited and diminished and blocked. And it is such a joy to make it our business to stay connected to the good. It is such a joy to be sparked by the good in our imaginations, in our experiences, in our interactions. It's a game changer.